Welcome back into our RPG game, and this is the game that you can just download from the video description down below. I made like a template project for this game. The basics of this game is not very perfect, as we can see, but we can do attack damage. We can also take damage. The main thing is that we can kill this NPC, and it's not very perfect. So there were a lot of requests for me to put a sword into his hand, and that's exactly what we're going to do today. We are going to try and put a sword into his hand. So let's go ahead and see how we can do that. Well, first let's get out of this play mode and let's go into our animator. So if you use this exact same project, this is the animator that you should get. Now what we're going to do is basically replicate this, but for swords. So let's go into movement and let's create a animation in here. So let's grab this, let's go and rename it draw sword, and let's grab this one as well. Now if we pay attention into this line right here, we are going to see that it first takes in a state which is equal to 1. Now we're going to do the exact same process, but we're going to ask for the state to be equal to 2. So let's create a transition in here. We're going to highlight this line in here, and we are going to ask if the state is equal to 2. We're gonna uncheck the exit time, and now we're good to go. All we have to do is make a transition from here without any condition, and after we do that, we are going to make a transition into a state machine. But we don't have a state machine, so we're going to create a state blend tree. So for now, I'm gonna call it sword blend tree. We're gonna make a transition, but instead of going back into here, we are going to be going over to our movement right here. So we don't want to go back into our draw sword. However, the main way of getting into this blend tree is by drawing a sword. So we're gonna make a transition and we're gonna go into our blend tree right here. And now there is only one way of getting into this blend tree, and that is by drawing a sword. So let's open it up, and this should be nothing new to you. So we have this blend tree, and as we can see, it has no parameters. So what I'm gonna do now, since this is going to be the exact same as this one, I'm just gonna copy this, paste it back here. Now we have a combat 0. I'll just rename this to sword blend, and I'll delete the sword blend tree, and this is our new blend tree. So we set all these up in a previous video, so you can go and check it out. And now what we can do is do the exact same thing, make a transition, and we need to do one specific thing. And thing is that we are going to have to go into our player, open the controller, and the problem is that that state is not changed in here ever. So the way I implemented the state changing mechanism is by using these NPCs. If we open up our NPC controller, we're going to see that we have a player game object or a player object, and the only reason that we're using that player object is to set the nav mesh agent so we can walk towards the player object, and we are also using it to set the state. So instead of setting it to this value that we're importing it in here, what we can do is set the value to be 1. And instead of just hard coding it right here, we're going to put it into here. So now, if we get close enough to this player, we're going to set the state to 2. So we're just going to save that. And now if we hit play, we should see our character drawing his weapon. So let's go over to our game and let's see what happens. As we can see, he just drawed his weapon. Now the problem is that we have this player character set to character state 2, and we also have this player going into our old combat. So we're gonna have to fix that. Okay, one mistake that I did is that I made this transition here greater than 2. We should have it greater than 1. And now any animation that is greater than 1 should trigger this animation right here. So let's see if it works. Right here, it actually works. Okay. And for now, all that's left for us to do is to actually give him a sword instead of that axe. And to do that, I'm using something called a game manager, as I've previously explained. And here is our weapon list as a prefab. So I'm just going to open that up and add in a new slot right here. I'm going to copy the axe and I'm just gonna paste it somewhere in here, and I'll call it sword. If we open our axe prefab, we should see something like this. We should see a ray casting from the middle of the axe. So after having duplicated the axe, I've renamed it to sword, and I'll just remove the actual axe that is inside it, and I'll put in a sword right here. So now it is a actual sword. I'll just replace the sword into the middle right here where the ray is being casted. And there we have it. We have a sword, and we can just make the hit distance a little bit longer. And now we can just go back into our scene, and we have a actual sword as a prefab. So all I'm going to do now is drag the sword prefab and drop it into the weapons list. And now if we hit play, we should see him actually drawing a sword, as we can see in here. Okay, that is all I'm going to do for this video. I hope you liked it. I hope you learned something from it, and I'll see you in the next videos.